The presenting sponsor for OnEducation is Classcraft. We're so excited to announce Classcraft's new story mode, which makes it easy for educators to harness the power of stories. But that's not all. Have you ever wanted to see yourself as a character in a story? Now teachers and students can create their custom game avatars and see them come to life on an augmented reality poster. To learn more about Classcraft's story mode and the new AR experience, simply visit classcraft.com.
What I want my classroom to feel like is like when you go to Disney World, you know it's fake, but like in the moment, you allow yourself and you're almost able to suspend your disbelief and get hooked on it.
Welcome to OnEducation. I'm Mike Washburn.
And I'm Glen Irvin. Friends, we have an awesome pod for you today. We will recap the Serious Play Montreal and Schoology Next conferences. And our guest this week is educator and author of EDrenaline, Rush John Meehan.
So we're going to put in the show notes the Periscope, the Schoology Periscope of the gamification, the musical, because I finally had a chance to watch it, I guess that night, later that night, and holy crap, it was really cool.
Yeah, it was amazing. Really, just an amazing job by Jared Lopatin. He is a teacher of the deaf in New York City, and he's just an amazing performer and director and singer. And he writes all of the lyrics. He does all of the interactions. So he wrote all of the script and everything else. And then he also makes sure to train me well. Because a lot of the songs I didn't actually know, they were really related to musicals this year. Like there was actually musicals from The Wiz and a Legally Blonde musical. So there was all of these references to all of this stuff that I'm not really familiar with. So he did a great job in training me in. And man, it went super well. And we even had Danny Patterson and Hope Elliott, two Schoology ambassadors and friends of ours, make special guest appearances. And they were like kind of these backup singers that we brought on. We did a reference to the Whoopi Goldberg Sister Act, one of the songs inside of Sister Act, the movie. And so we had Hope and Danny, and they had their nun outfits on, and it was crazy. I mean, crazy awesome and really well received. So yeah, that was the cap of Schoology Next. I mean, that was the last, the second to last day, but
right.
the last performance of that specific day.
Good way to end a day. Right. I mean, everyone's a little bit tired, probably. This was like a get you back up for the rest of the night.
Yes. Yeah. No, I mean, it was a fantastic way to end the day. Room was gigantic, and there was a lot of people just participating and just having a great time. And that's what we want. We wanted it to be something where you could just come away with it, laugh at all the different lyrics that Jared has written, all the different kind of punchlines in our little script, and people were having a great time singing along and everything else. So, yep.
What was it called? It was called something else. It wasn't called Gamification the Musical this year. It was called, what was it, Level Up?
I think it was just basically Gamification the Musical Part 2. I think it said something about leveling up. And we may end up, we're thinking about how we're going to, if we do it again next year, we're not sure we'll go with gamification as the theme. We'll do some sort of kind of more broad educational kind of thing, because we basically covered everything. And with 2 1-hour performances on all kinds of different things that have to do with gamification theme and leveling up and everything else that you could ever think of that has to do with games or gamification, game-based learning. It was part of one of these 2 shows. And we even did products this year. We have a Minecraft song.
The Minecraft song was great.
We had a Deck Toys and Gimp Kit song. I mean, we were doing products even now. So we're like, okay, it might be time for us to branch out beyond these things. But no, it was super fun. And like I said, Jared, you're amazing.
I gotta give Jared. I gave him a shout out on Twitter, and I gotta shout him out here. Man, can that dude sing?
Yeah, like, he's amazing.
He brought it. Like I thought last year was really good, but man, the singing. He sang really well this year. It was entertaining to watch, and I'm sure in person it would have been pretty exciting.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's. Yeah, hopefully they came across. I think I watched part of that video, and hopefully you guys enjoy it. So let us know.
How was the rest of the conference?
Fantastic. Schoology Next is always a ridiculously well put together conference in amazing, beautiful sites. So I had never been, obviously, to this specific part of Florida, and we ended up in the Boca Raton Golf Resort Club, which I guess is a super exclusive club. You have a gated entrance to be able to come into it, and it's a beautiful place. And the food they serve, part of your ticket is all your food. Food was amazing. Yep. The events are amazing that they put together. So, I mean, it's Schoology always goes all out for the Schoology Next conference. And this was, again, another one of those years where it's, you were like, wow, that was an experience. It's not just a conference, it's a total experience. Wanted to make sure that I shouted out Educator of the Year. I know some people may not be Schoology related people, but these people who get these awards are really amazing educators overall. Brian Brueggemann, he's a teacher in Wisconsin, a band instructor. I actually known him for a long time, and he received Educator of the Year this year. And then our friend Rick Bray received Ambassador of the Year. Really, the Ambassador program is about connecting with other people and helping other people out using Schoology and just reaching out to them and really lifting up people and helping them in whatever situations you can. And that's what Rick has done all year long. He's an amazing person. And of course, I wanted to shout out Melissa Riggs, who teaches in Colorado, and she's just she is the biggest supporter of OnEducation. I mean, we have a lot of supporters of OnEducation, but man, she is just amazing. And she was grabbed all of the stickers that she could get, and she was spreading the message about OnEducation and why you should be listening to the show. So Melissa, you're amazing. And of course, all of the other ambassadors you get to meet up with and then connect with again. Just a great time, an amazing time. So many amazing, beautiful people took pictures with us, talked about the podcast, and just said how much, how good of a job we're doing. So thank you, all of you guys, for all your support.
I definitely had a lot of FOMO, I guess, but I was following along as actively as I possibly could.
Yes, and you were at a different conference though too.
So I was at Serious Play. In Montreal at the University of Quebec at Montreal, UQAM, I guess is what they call it, right downtown. Is pretty cool. It was neat. I've never been to it. It's a small conference, probably about half the size of Next, so maybe about 150 attendees. Or so, but wicked smart people. This was definitely like an academia type conference. I guess it's kind of inherent in the name, Serious Play. But there was definitely, even the keynote was pretty academic. It was the head of the Institute of Play. So this is the same woman that was at the Games for Change doing that panel. Obviously, we've talked about Institute of Play is shutting down a little bit. Or is shutting down, and so she gave the keynote at Serious Play, and spent some time talking about Minecraft, and I thought one of the things that I found super interesting in her keynote was talking about the our natural inclination as teachers to put gates or barriers in front of our kids in terms of their behavior online. And we do that even with Minecraft and Minecraft Education Edition, which has built into it a lot of ways for us to control the kids, to manage them and to put safeguards like no PvP and no breaking things and timeouts and all of this other stuff that you can potentially do. And she talked a lot about how, we're actually maybe missing an opportunity to do some really good SEL work, allowing kids to, remove these barriers so that kids can have an opportunity to discuss and share kind of how they're feeling about, when things don't work right and when people are behaving poorly in games and how we can resolve conflict in games. But when we remove all of the opportunities for conflict to exist, we miss those opportunities. I was sitting beside Paul Darvasi and I said to him, this is exactly the opposite of what they teach you to do in school. It's like, remove all of these conflict situations so that you have this like nice, smooth, beautiful running class. But in reality, conflict isn't always a bad thing, because it gives us the opportunity to help kids learn how to deal with conflict. So it was super interesting. It was a really interesting keynote. As we've talked about a little bit lately, SEL was all over the place. It is definitely the theme of the next, year and a half, and recent time. A lot of people are talking about social emotional learning and how to help kids talk about themselves and how they interact with people. It's been really interesting. What else happened that was really cool? The presentation that Sean Young gave about Classcraft and SEL was really great as well, and how SEL is kind of embedded into the nature of games and gamification. So very, very, very cool. I enjoyed my time in Montreal. Montreal is a beautiful city. You should go to Montreal if you get a chance. It's very old, very, very old. And there's tons of great history if you're a history buff, and just like lots of old things, buildings and architecture. It's all over the place in Montreal.
Yeah, it's obviously French speaking, right? Province.
Well, Quebec is a French-speaking province. Yeah, absolutely. Most of Montreal is fully bilingual. In a lot of restaurants, they'll literally say hello, bonjour, and then depending on how you respond, they will then talk in French or in English. If you say hi, how you doing, they'll start talking to you in English. Almost everyone is bilingual in Montreal. It's a very easy city for an English-speaking person to get around in. If you go almost anywhere else, to be honest, in Quebec, you'll have a much more difficult time if you don't speak French. Like even Quebec City is very, very French. But Montreal is very, very not. Like you can get around Montreal very easily without knowing any French at all.
That's super cool. I would definitely want to visit it. Just looking at all the pictures, really beautiful place.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's gorgeous. There's a lot of construction. even Paul Pardavazzi, his in-laws live in Montreal, so he was visiting them, but he's very familiar with Montreal, but he said, man, even I was thrown off by the amount of construction. Everything is either undergoing renovations or repairs. There were whole giant roads torn up in Montreal. It was pretty wild. Even old Montreal, they're redoing some of the cobblestone roads in old Montreal, the 500 or 600 year old parts of the city. And they're redoing some of the roads there, so a lot of those are even torn up a little bit and being replaced. So it was pretty wild how much construction, but it is a beautiful city with lots of personality, tons of culture, tons of personality for sure. The churches are mind blowing. Just they're huge and they're everywhere, because Montreal was a very Catholic area, Catholic city, or at least in history it has been. So I put a video on Twitter of the Notre Dame Basilica.
Really beautiful,
and the inside of it's just stunning, just absolutely stunning. And I'm not a religious person anymore, but man, oh man, it was pretty impressive to be inside there and looking around. So that was our time this week. We had a good week. We were both in different places and doing a bunch of different things, and it seems like we both had a pretty good time. And now we're back home and back to whatever it is that we're doing. I got tons of work to do, that's for sure.
Yes.
I've been holding off on emails and stuff like that, so my email list is a little bit gigantic now. When we come back, we actually spent a considerable amount of time talking to John Meehan. So we're going to play that whole interview for you now. So just stay with us. OnEducation is brought to you by Pick My Kid. When my son was in first grade, he was put on the wrong bus. Pick My Kid is a product my son's school could have used. Pick My Kid is an automated dismissal solution that cuts car line times in half, engages parents with a parent app by being able to change dismissal routines right from their phone. Friends, that means no more front office calls. Pick My Kid is affordable for schools and removes dismissal stress for parents, teachers, and staff members. For more information, visit pickmykid.com. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. John Meehan is an English teacher and instructional coach at Bishop O'Connell High School in Arlington, Virginia. He's also a speaker and the author of the just-released book, EDrenaline Rush. And he joins us on the podcast today. Welcome to the show, John.
Oh, thank you so much, guys, for having me. I'm really pumped to be here.
So your book just came out a few weeks ago. Congratulations, by the way.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's the craziest thing because this has been an idea in my head for like a long time. And then it's been an idea on my desktop or on my Google Drive for, like a year, like, the development process has been that long. And so now to finally share it with people, I'm like, oh yeah, I did that. That's a thing. And I'm really excited to see the response and the connect with people. It's been like a whirlwind. So it's been very cool in the past couple of weeks. Yeah.
So when I watched that video on Facebook of you seeing your book for the first time, I felt that, man. Like I was like, I had all the emotions. It was awesome to watch. And I am always interested in the process. I like talking to folks about the act of writing a book, mainly because I intend to write one myself. And everyone's story is just a little different. Maybe share some of your thoughts on what the process looked like for you, how it felt to be done, and maybe what you were thinking when you saw your book for the first time there.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that are in that question. It's a great question. So in November of 2017, I guess, I had a chance to go to the Virginia ASCD annual conference. I was presenting. And I ran into George Couros, who had written The Innovator's Mindset. He was kind of doing the circuit, giving his talk about that. And I had a chance to meet with George and connect, and he was very instrumental to like inspiring me to keep working and doing a good, just keep it up, right? But he said in his talk, he's like, The Innovator's Mindset was like a #1 selling book on Amazon. And he's like, and I didn't write it in a traditional way. I didn't have note cards. I didn't have a desk. He's like, I did this at Starbucks over the course of 2 weeks. And I'm like, oh man, I got to step my game up. He can write a book in 2 weeks. So he's like, keep doing what you're doing. I'm like, I've been working 35 years to write a book, man. And I'm like, all right, 2 weeks, done. So I actually kind of committed full tilt, really. I threw myself at the project. And I started, Gary Vaynerchuk, who's a big social media influencer, and he's an angel investor in like Uber and Snapchat, or, he's big in like the social media space about how to get good at writing. He says, you got to get to a spot in your writing where like blogging gets in the way of what you really need to do. He says, so you should make your process your content. And I really fell in love with that idea. Like, okay, I'm just going to be talking about what I do every day. And that would be like in my drive into work, I record a podcast every Monday. And it's called Talk to Me in the Car. And I just talk about instructional coaching while I'm in the car, talk about education. And so like using that same model, I was like, well, I do Voxer chats when I'm in the car. I listen to audio tape, books on tape in the car. I'm like, why don't I just start writing a book while driving to work? And that's what I did. So I got in the car and like driving to work and from work and like just, word vomit into the Siri, write this down. And I just started writing, without my hands. And so when I actually read it back, it was like a vomit draft. It was really, really ugly, but it was like 2 weeks because I said, if Couros could do it in 2 weeks, darn it, I'm gonna do this. And I like just gave 2 weeks of brain dump into, and I say, as far as process goes, and it's a good question, like reading is breathing in and writing is breathing out. Like this is not something that I just made up in 2 weeks. I've been doing this gig for 10 years. Instructional coaches and travel. Like I meet up with people. I connect. I just spend a lot of time on Twitter. It's been like 10 years of filling up my sponge with ideas and like traveling for work. Like something like 36,000 miles around the planet. Like the planet's only 24,000 miles around, and like in 5 years I've done it a time and a half just for my little school. So for that, like I have a lot of things in the brain that just the sponge needed to get squeezed. And so I just did a word dump in the car. And then, I put it all in together, let it sit for a few weeks. I had a friend who said, you should really do something with this. And I was like, I don't know. My wife and I took a trip last summer. We were in Mexico on the beach, and the hotel had really good Wi-Fi. So like you could even get the Wi-Fi signal even on the beach. And so I just took that, which was a Google Doc, and started editing it right there on my phone. I turned my wife like in the middle of vacation. I said like, yeah, I think I wrote a book. And that's how it went down. I'm like, legit, and it, talk about power of positive thinking, putting out in the universe. I feel like I should share with you guys that an image you can like push out to your listeners. But I then took what was the Google Doc file, sent it to myself as a PDF, but I sent it not to my email. I emailed it to my Kindle. So right there on the beach in Cancun, I took a picture of my Kindle with, quote, my book, which was really just like a Word document that had been converted, to get a feel for what it was like to hold in my hands like a thing that I had written. And it felt real for a second. I was like, oh, this is the coolest thing. And I thought maybe that's maybe where it ends, but at least I felt that I had, if nothing else, a whole lot of blog posts that could be content for a year's worth of stuff. So then when I reached out to the Burgesses and they were like, hey, we'd love to see more. And I had the manuscript. Most people don't write a whole book before they pitch the book because if you're going down the wrong road, that's a lot of work to have to redo. But I was like, I'm sure I did this the wrong way, but I'm totally new to it. And I sent it to them and they got back in touch with me. They said, let's do it. Let's do the book. And I think that's when you saw the video. It's just like, oh man, this is 18 months worth of process that gets to that. And like, you can't help it. It's just overwhelming. So it was very, very cool, very, very humbling. And I'm recording this with you guys on Saturday. I'm going on vacation on Monday. And I'm like, maybe I'll bring my phone and write some stuff. Who knows?
see what next book you can bust out on that vacation.
We'll see. I mean, like, that's a good life if you can get it. Like every year, take a writer's retreat, come back with a new book.
That's amazing. So as an instructional coach, I share that same job duty as you do. You're responsible, obviously, for professional development. And Mike and I have just seen so much professional development that's just not really well done. But we've seen videos of you when you deliver PD, and it seems like the most fun people have ever had. So can you tell us, like, what do you find is the most effective way when working with adults rather than working with, our students?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that the data bears out that like most PD, everyone's required to do it, and most PD is pretty much awful because it hasn't evolved, right? This could have been and should have been an email, and if it takes us an hour to walk through that, which could have been a PowerPoint slide where they're just reading to us, the people who are going to do it are going to do it with or without that presentation. The people who are not going to do it, that hour-long presentation won't be enough. And so what I really try to do is model in my PD, because I work as the school's PD director. In addition to my stuff in the classroom, like, what would I want this to feel like if this was a classroom thing that I can get a walk-away strategy today so I could make it happen in my classroom with minimal impact? And that's how I kind of do my podcast too. It's like, I got 10 minutes. I'm going to set you on fire. You're going to catch a whole bunch of ideas here, and then I want you to do it and do it and do it and do it. So it feels like this is really manageable, really bite-sized. And so you're creating a system that kind of replaces micro management with like micro credentials. Like you felt a small level up ability and you felt yourself like growing and like gaining confidence in a new pedagogy because you had a lot of time to just practice it as an adult learner in a room with other adult learners. And for me then it's like, that wasn't so bad, was it? Cool. Why don't you swing by the office sometime in the midweek and we can get those numbers or we can get those things implemented in your classroom. And the numbers bear out that with instructional coaching, like when they get that job embedded support, that's where real difference happens because it's not the one size fits none thing. And I think the thing is we've been for a very long time using 19th century practices during the 20th century to teach students who will have to succeed in the 21st century. Yes. And like, so we're sitting and modeling bad pedagogy to ask them to do better pedagogy. And so the best we can do is like, hey, everybody, make a website on Moodle and, spend 3 weeks. Moodle becomes the new shiny toy that everyone has to play with. And that's not a knock on Moodle or anything else. It's just, that's stupid. That doesn't work. It's not natural. So I really try to inject that excitement. And what I say in the classroom is like, the enthusiasm is infectious. If it's your favorite class, you like it the most. If it's your best class, you learn the most. And I kind of think those two things go hand in hand. So I try in my PD sessions to really get that energy really, really high. And not like with fake, like rah-rah, how we feeling, like Cleveland, cheers, but like real authentic deliverable stuff. People can say, hey, the rubber hits the road here. This is a thing that I can make happen in my classroom.
Awesome.
You said in the book at one point, and I think it actually applies to adults too, that kids who like you will learn better from you. I read that line about 5 times. I just was like, it was literally, and where it is in the book, it's interesting because it's at the top of the next page. So like if you're reading quickly, you didn't even maybe even like realize you had just read maybe one of the most profound parts of the whole start of the book in my mind. Anyways, I stopped and I'm like, oh my God, that's everything, right?
I mean,
and
like,
adults are the exact same way.
Because teaching is relational, right? And like you have to, and I tell people when I work in instructional coaching, like as I work with other team of coaches, like you need to lay that groundwork and they need to trust you so they can trust the process. If they do that and they know you're really in for them, like they'll jump through hoops of fire for you. But like you got to do the Bloom stuff after the Maslow stuff. You got to get that basis of, hey, you're safe here, you're supported here. I'm not going to rat you out. I'm not going to tittle tattle like to the admin and like get you in trouble for it. I want to be here with you. And like, so I approach it like, and I you know, it's sort of the book's angle is I want to treat lesson planning like it's game planning, so I can think more like an athletic event. Okay, let's try this. Okay, that didn't work. Let's come up with a new game plan. So like the game plan keeps being fluid and receptive, which keeps the people at the center of the decision, not like process. Like our goal is to recognize that we don't teach content, we teach people, and like figuring out who people are and what makes them tick and listening to their stories and connecting. And like I know that's like, you know, maybe pie in the sky and a little fluffy, but I think it's true. If you don't put in the time for your people, they're not going to care anything about math, science, English, history, anything like that. And the same holds for adults, maybe even more so, because they just don't have time. They've seen it and done it, so they don't want to have their time wasted.
Totally. Your story about teaching Animal Farm is amazing. I smiled the entire time I was reading that part of the book. It brought back a memory of mine I wanted to share with you of me teaching one of my students how to design. Well, I taught graphic design. It was one of the units in my course. And
Sick.
one of the kids wanted to create a proper propaganda poster in the style of Imperial Japan. Something he saw something and he was like, this is what I want to do for this assignment. They were doing a video game and the video game had some elements of kind of propaganda in it, so he wanted to make a poster for his game that was in that style. So my principal walks by and happens to stop and kind of look in, and I had a whole bunch of like Nazi and Soviet propaganda up on my screen. It was just, and I'm like, but we were both history majors, and he ended up actually sticking around to talk about the design elements of the posters.
Oh, sure, right.
And what made them so unique. So I have two things related to that story and related to your story that I wanna talk to you about. The first part of your book talks about theme. And the importance of telling the stories and getting engaged in the theme of what you're learning. And I don't think that can be understated. What makes that so critical to teaching and learning? What is so important about theme?
I think your imagination. I mean, that's it. Like it boils down to, I joke that like, I think my teaching style is like a mix of like Walt Disney meets Jeff Probst from Survivor meets Vince McMahon from the WWE. Like I want my class to feel like this escapist reality that you step into the magic circle and for a minute, all the stuff that you're dealing with outside of the classroom, you're able to table it and like, I can't handle that stuff, but I can handle this stuff. I can do this, and I can do this at a very, very high level. And I think as students are dealing with like their own hopes and fears and aspirations, like that's why I hate that phrase, well, the real world. Like this is their real world, right? Like this is their life, and they're struggling with, you know, bullying and self-harm and FOMO and like social media pressures, and like they're not looking at their phone or they are looking at their phone, and all that stuff's kind of kicking around their head. What I want my classroom to feel like is like when you go to Disney World, you know it's fake, but like in the moment, you allow yourself and you're almost able to suspend your disbelief and get hooked on it. And like I said, like pro wrestling is the same way. Like, yeah, it's fake, but like when you watch the Avengers TV show or the movie, like for a minute, you really find yourself, those mirror neurons in your brain are kicking around like, no, that's my favorite guy. I hope he survives, or I hope that goes that way. And like you're on the edge of your seat, like rooting for it. So like you feel like when they win, you won. And so how do I make that story come alive in the classroom is a big thing I've been working on from the first day of my teaching career, because I didn't really know much about teaching. I was a career changer, but I was in media and marketing, and I knew how to like make an event, like a big hoopla thing. So I was like, okay, well, if I can get them fired up to like give money to my alma mater, maybe I can get kids fired up to read books. And that was kind of my approach is, you play the hand that you're dealt and the one that you know. And I was like, right, I got to get them fired up because these kids don't care about Animal Farm. I don't blame them, because I didn't care about Animal Farm when I was a kid their age. And like their world is so big and so full of stuff.
Yeah.
You have to have that relevance. And I think when you can capture someone's imagination, they'll really start to say, okay, there's more to this. And when they raise an eyebrow, like that's an old teaching trick. Anytime a kid moves an eyebrow in the class, up, down, left, right, call on that kid because they're thinking something. And like you want that in the classroom. So if I can come in, like raise some eyebrows, then you ride that momentum. You can get a lot of goodwill from that. So I think that's been a big critical lever in my classroom.
So the second takeaway from your story about teaching Animal Farm is how important buy-in is from your peers and administrators. And that's actually what made me recall my own stories, because you talk about that buy-in piece. And now, as someone talking about you as someone who not only has to craft their own themes for your own class, but also provide guidance and input and support, and maybe even sometimes back up. No, this person really does know what they're doing. Can you speak to how critical that relationship is between teachers and administrators? I tend to frame it in terms of trust, but there's a lot more even than trust that goes into this, right?
I absolutely. I think it's out of Carose's book too. He talks about the hidden performance tax when you have low trust environments. It makes it like take 3 times as long to get things done.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm kind of the exact worst guy to talk about this, because it's like, oh, it comes so easy. No, it doesn't, man. It's work. You got to hustle. Like you gotta make it move. And there have been times in my career, and I'm not going to name names, but like people don't like it when you're that new shiny toy and you're doing it. And that creates these resentments, because it's this perceived either misconception or misperception that like, hey, that's not what teaching should look like. I shouldn't have to go that extra mile. And so it does kind of break down the idea of the faculty lounge, right? Like what people are saying about you in your classroom, or, that's not real teaching. And the kids only like him because he plays games. It's like, Quinn Rollins talks about that in his book, Play Like a Pirate. He's like, there's a lot of pressure with being the fun teacher, because that sort of presumes a lot, and it creates the resentment a little bit. So what you really need to do is like jump in with both feet. And that Brene Brown stuff is really helpful too, about empathy building. Like I want to talk to my admin team and get on the same page with them, so they know my heart is always in the right place. And I'm gonna do some crazy, stupid stuff, and some of it's not gonna work, but like I'm doing this because I'm there for the kids in my classroom. And like, especially in a book, and that's funny that, because I almost deleted that story, because it is, it's really outrageous. And I was like, I don't know if this is going to play well, but like, it's the single thing that people have said great things about. Like I was aware as a white educator in an urban school, like I'm dealing with Black and Hispanic students, and they don't have a lot of white teachers. And I'm coming in here and doing this outrageous, over the top stuff. Like I needed to be abundantly clear that this is not like white savior complex who comes in and changes the game of education. Rather, it's I'm only able to do it because I have the support of a Black and Hispanic administration who is all in for these kids just as much as I am, maybe more so. And they want to see these kids get that support and that growth necessary. And that's why they're willing to invest in me. And that they're willing to take a chance on that is so, like, it's vital to the work, because eventually they're going to leave my class and they're going to have another teacher. And I need them to see that the school has their back and they're all there for the same purpose. Otherwise, it's just one crazy guy with one crazy idea. And like I always talk about at my job, like the teacher is the easiest person, unfortunately, in the education system to replace. Like the bus or the lottery scenario, you get run over or you get, the lottery ticket, you don't come back tomorrow. How are these kids going to trust the education system? How are they going to learn?
So John, there's a chapter in your book that's filled with mini games called Exit Through the Gift Shop. I absolutely love all the creative ideas you share there for educators to get started. And can you share a few of your favorite mini games?
Oh man, I have a bunch. I think that any game is cool for educators to look at and like sort of dissect. There's a quote by E.B. White who says, dissecting humor is like dissecting a frog, right? Like no one enjoys it that much, and you kind of kill the thing in the process. But what games do is like they have rules, right? They have very clear parameters. They have winners and losers. And that's not unlike school, right? There's points, there's leaders, there's people who have advantages. So I try to build that stuff into my classroom whenever I can. So I really loaded up the book as many as I could. It's just like spray with a fire hose, like mini games and things you can do to teach any course or content. A few that I love a game I don't know if it's in that chapter, but it's later in the book. I call it a hashtag hunt. One of my favorite games. I think it's fantastic. Hashtag hunt, you can do it with envelopes or do it with just sheets of paper. And the envelope on the outside has a thing to look for item for any course or content area. I teach literature, so I speak the language of literature. So like these are different themes or symbols through a book. So like in Huck Finn, we look for examples of deception. We call it Huck Lies. Or examples of faith, because I'm in a Catholic school. So like satires of religion that come through the book. Or of nature, or of race, or politics, whatever it is. And so on the outside of the envelope, it just says that. And that's the quote hashtag that they're looking for. Kids understand the language of hashtags. So like dive into the book, find examples of X or Y or Z. Fine. And they get X number of minutes to look for it. And then when time's up, okay, now we can have a Socratic seminar. We just talk about what we found. The team with the most points wins. But to add a little bit of fun to it, when you go to like your favorite sub shop, like a sandwich shop, like Jersey Mike's or Subway, they give you a card, like a punch card with like 8 holes or 10 holes. And what they found, the research is like there's no statistic difference between whether people use the 8-hole card or the 10-hole card. They fill them out at about the same rate to get their free sandwiches. But if they give you a 10-hole card and they punch the first 2, you feel like you had a beginner's luck bonus, and you fill out the cards and like 80% more. So I was like, well, that's so cool, right? So like for human motivation, and maybe a little bit of manipulation, it's the same way that casinos work. Like you get those beginner luck bonus, and you start pulling that wheel or pulling that lever again and again. So with the hashtag hunt, what I'll do is inside the envelope, then they open it up and they either get a bonus couple of points or a negative couple of points to start them out. And the idea is if they get the bonus couple of points, they're like, whoa, I must have stumbled onto a hard center. He helped us out and gave us 5 free points. And so they trick themselves into doing more work. But on the flip side, if they get the negative points, they're like, oh man, he took some points away. This must be a really easy center. We have to work harder. And like either way, the motivation is tricked into doing more work. I love that in the classroom because you really can use it any course, any content area, at any grade level. I think that one's great. In the book, I also talk about the egg dash challenge. That one kind of, that by dumb luck, I said, like, when I die, I will have done all this education research on like a life in education. And I like my legacy will be the guy who played with plastic Easter eggs, which is ridiculous. But like that's so dope. It's like cut up a worksheet, and worksheets are awful for education. Sometimes you just need to like move through recap of content, cut them up with slips and put them in Easter eggs, and put the Easter eggs in front of the classroom, or you can use envelopes or whatever it is. Send people racing, grab one, take it back to your desk group and solve it. When you've solved it, you think you got it. Write it down on a sheet of paper, then lock that egg back up. Back you go to grab another piece. How many pieces of the puzzle can you solve in 5 minutes or something like that? It's out of Doug Limov's book, Teach Like a Champion. He says the reward for correct answers is always harder questions, and that the learning never stops. So that's it. It's like, we got 5 minutes. How much can you get done? That's just a worksheet. That's nothing fancy. But like after the game quote is over, you reveal hidden point values for question 1 through 40. And now the kids are fired up that they got that question right, or how many they could get right. Or you could theme it and color code it. So like how many of the reds and the blues and the greens they can solve. You can even use a Google Drive or Google form so that they submit it all online and it auto grades it for you. And it's like, well, that's dopey, but that's fun. It makes an easy like a inroad to learning in the classroom. So I love those two are the big ones.
You've done that in PD as well. That's one of the videos that I've seen.
Yeah, man. So that one actually, so wild. It was the stupidest thing. So the life of a PD person, for anybody who's listening, the guy who delivers PD at your school, if they have to be like the guy who comes in, it's a really lonely endeavor because you come to somebody's school and like they're all excited to see you, but they're not really excited to see you. They don't know who you are. And I struggle with anxiety and depression in my own life. So like I'm constantly feeling like alone, even in my own space. So I'm in the car afterwards and I did this PD and I was like, oh, I was, fine. But like, it's a 2-hour drive. It's rainy and I have to carry my books and my bags and my games. And none of these people really know me and I'm never going to have a conversation with them afterwards. I'm feeling just like kind of left out. But I sent a tweet out like, oh, you did this thing. And of course there's a spelling error in the video because why not? As you send out a thing that goes viral. And I go to bed and I wake up the next morning and it has 10,000 views. I'm like, oh, This is like a for real thing now. Like it wound up being a for real thing. So I quickly took that, which was just a training activity. And I was like, I'm going to tap into letting people know how to do it, push the recipe up online for anybody to see. And I think that's actually been a big driver in like getting people to follow me on Twitter, which then led to the book and like all that stuff, because that video wound up having like 75,000 hits in a month. And it wound up being in 40 different states. People did egg dash challenges in 10 different countries and like half a dozen Canadian provinces. And I was just floored by like this simple idea of adding fun and excitement just by taking a worksheet and cutting it into pieces. And things like that are super cool because it's very low impact. It doesn't require you to build a whole Jeopardy board for the whole classroom. Right. It just, it's a different way of thinking about delivering the same old with a fun kind of twist.
That's awesome. I seem to be becoming obsessed with what I call alternative rubrics. I'm planning to write a nice long blog post about them soon. I think rubrics, get a bad rap, mainly because they aren't being used creatively. That being said, we've spent some time recently with folks who are using them really, really well. Like we just had AJ Giuliani on last week, and we talked a bit about the grit rubric. Your personal records rubric is amazing. Can you talk? Can you talk a bit about that, where the idea came from, and how effective you find it for student self-evaluation?
Sure, yeah. So the personal record rubric, which is available on my website, and you guys could have copies of any of these templates, please. Like I said, I give everything away for free. I don't do it to make money. You get an education to make a difference. And so like to make an impact is so happy. Be happy if you bought the book. That'd be great. My publisher would love that if you bought the book. But like as much as I can give away for free, I'm happy to do it. But the personal record rubric, so like to kind of describe what it looks like if you're not looking at a computer, because sometimes when people describe abstractions, it can get a little hairy. So I'm just going to pull it up and kind of explain what it looks like, if that makes sense. The personal record rubric looks almost like a spider web, or like a spider web graph or a radar plot graph. And And if you've ever played like a video game like Madden, where you have like a create a character or create a create a wrestler or build your own fighter, whatever it is, you have attribute points, which then you sprinkle into the spider web graph. So maybe they're a little bit more fast than they are strong, or maybe they're stronger than they have good hands, or maybe they have intelligence. And so you just use your attribute points and kind of build out the graph with the goal of having your spider web built out to the top of each of these pieces. I run things like Spartan races, and afterwards they give you your analytics, how you did in each of these different obstacles, your timing, and blah, 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 blah. And I play a lot of Madden football. So like that create a team, create a wrestler, create a character thing. I'm familiar with the idea of watching a web kind of bloom almost like a flower, start in the middle and kind of work out. So what I'll do is in my classroom, I'll take that personal record rubric and give back, if you can imagine like left panel, right panel. On the left panel is just the traditional rubric. 5 out of 5, 4 out of 5, 3 out of 5, 2 out of 5 for each of 8 different look for indicators. But on the right-hand side, it looks like a spider web with 8 different points. And I ask students to plot on that rubric what the left panel said. So like if it said you got a 3 out of 5 in your thesis statement, or like a 4 out of 5 in your transitions. So they're taking the data I provided to them, and then they're interacting with that data into that spider web graph. So then they have a visual representation of what that growth pattern looks like. Then I ask them to answer 3 questions, and I always ask them to answer the questions one at a time so they actually take the question seriously and don't just sort of half-heartedly move through all 3 at once. Question 1 is, if this is an obstacle course, which of these obstacles did you dominate? Oh, you have great thesis. Okay, blah, 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 blah. And they just write about why and how they dominated the thesis, what they did to get there. Question 2 is, okay, which obstacles give you the most trouble? And it's like, oh, you know what? I have trouble with transition sentences or quote integration. I'm having a hard time with that. And then question 3 is, okay, so what can we do to set some goals to help you with the thing that you're struggling with? So it's not like Bart Simpson writing on the board, like, I will not throw spitballs at the teacher. It's like targeted feedback based on what you did or had trouble with. So we can like use that to move it better, because ultimately I don't really care. Like, pick your grade in my classroom. You want an A, you want a B, you want to C. I don't care what your number grade is. What I want to see is you're metacognating and thinking about what you can do better next time. And then what we do is we give back that same chart for the next activity of the exact same variety. And then they use a different color pen and map for themselves. Look, I used to be a 4 out of 5 for thesis. Now I'm a 5 out of 5. Or I'm seeing growth patterns here, but I'm still struggling with. That's a good thing. And that's talking about teaching the mastery, and that's talking about like standards-based grading. And that's really what you want to go with it, because then you could, if you still have to give traditional grades, maybe the graded essay that you did as a teacher is worth 50% of the grade, but their own reflection on their learning is worth that other 50%. And then you can empower your kid to help, move themselves up the ladder, because like, take this process seriously. I'm just one guy. When I get hit by a bus or abducted by aliens or win the lottery, forget about what Meehan says. What do you see with you? And like that you are responsible for your own personal records, and kind of can go back to it and see that. And that's easy then at the end of the year to be like, this is what I mean when I say this kid is ready for the next level, because you can see those visually kind of mapped for them.
So John, you have a real passion for marathons and Spartan runs. And you have a chapter in the book where you're connecting those types of endurance type of activities to the classroom. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I should have picked a different hobby, because this one hurts.
Yes.
I think for my next book would be like how to lay on a beach for education.
Right.
My wife is joking. She says, John, this adrenaline rush has been like your thing. What's your next thing? And I was like, I don't know. She goes, because there's all these brain chemicals. There's serotonin. There's dopamine. I was like, oh, dope-ed-mine. That's the name of her book. Or, serotonin rush, patent pending. But that's like, how to take a nap and like how to relax. But like the mud runs and the obstacle courses, they trick you into paying your own money so you can do somebody else's yard work for them. Like, you're hauling buckets of stuff up hills. You're diving into like big pools of water. You're jumping off of roofs into like these big plunges, and like, you're having the time of your life. But you're working really hard in like high risk scenarios. And if you present this to somebody like in isolation, that's like a crazy person thing. No one should seek out. It's very Tyler Durden, like Fight Club. Like, is your life so dry and so boring that you have to feel the need to get electric shocks on the weekend? But what I think it does well, and I worked in media and marketing, so I kind of came through it that way, is Spartan race will charge you, and Tough Mudder will charge you, and like these obstacle course races will charge you a ton of money for like the race itself is a few $100, because they have the insurance and they have to keep you safe. They'll charge you for checking your bag at the event, like $15, $20 for the bag check. They'll charge you for parking on the day of, $20 to park on a lot, and like they'll nickel and dime you for all that stuff. And I'm not trying to slag on it; it's a good business model. But what they do is they give away your photos for free, and that's insane, because every marathon I ever ran, charges you for your photos. That's where they make their money, right? I'm like, well, why are these people giving this stuff away for free? And the answer is because of stuff like the Ice Bucket Challenge. You post these crazy pictures of you doing all this crazy stuff on the internet, and now every friend of yours is like, that's insane. What is that? I want it. And like, so thinking about like, you know, I think Malcolm Gladwell will call it like the stickiness factor of what you're doing in your classroom. Like, is what you're doing the type of thing that a kid wants to grab on his or her Snapchat, take a picture of that craziness and push it out to their friends? Because it's a little bit of curb appeal, but like a little bit of curb appeal goes a long way to get people to, you got to see what's happening in the third period today. Oh man, you're going to be over the moon about it. Because, like, if you are not commanding the space online about your class, they're having back channel conversation about your class one way or another. And like, I want to be front and center and very, very transparent. Like, you don't want to miss today's class because this is the crazy stuff we're talking about. And thankfully, my admin has been very supportive. I'm at a Catholic school, kids sign waivers and things like that, where we know their pictures and their images are going to be used in these videos, but then they know they're, quote, performing for an audience. They want to come that much more ready to go. Like, Mr. Meehan, can I get in today's video? And so I'll use my classroom like as an episode of Sports Center. I'll grab the camera and you were talking about like I'll be like, hey, it's Mr. Meehan, and today we're doing blah, blah, blah. What are we doing, Billy? And Billy will explain what Billy's doing while Billy's playing that activity, that game. And like, you can see that enthusiasm. If a picture tells 1,000 words, like a video is even better. It's not being very long, but like 30 seconds and 45 seconds, and you watch these people freaking out and having fun and laughing. It's like, okay, well, my English class sucks. I want to go there because that looks like a thing where I can get something out of it. And then that's what the Spartan runs do, right? Is like, you're laughing with your friends and you don't realize you're doing an ungodly amount of work. But because that adrenaline is pumping, like, you're in. So that's a big thing I try to harness in the book and in the classroom.
Amazing. So John, tell everyone how they can connect with you online. Tell us what's going on in your life. Are you heading out to speak anywhere anytime soon? And where can they get a copy of this awesome new book of yours?
Well, yeah, thank you guys again for taking some time with me today. It's been a whirlwind and I'm really excited. Please feel free to reach out to me on Twitter. I'm at Meehan EDU. That's Meehan like my last name, Meehan, and EDU like teaching, because I'm fired up to teach and I would love to talk with anybody who's changing the game in education. So I'm all in for that. Next week, I really am going on vacation. I'm going to take a breath and breather and maybe do some writing on dopamine or serotonin, just to like lay on a beach. But my July is kind of jam-packed into August. On Wednesday, I'm up in Shippensburg University for the Pennsylvania Association Education Communications Technology Keystone Technology Innovator Summit. I'm very excited to be up in Pennsylvania, about 100 teachers there. I have a Facebook live chat that'll be on the 28th of July. That's through ASCD. We're hosting a sold-out 2-day training at O'Connell High School where I work for about 40 educators through the DC, Maryland, Virginia area. We're fired up at that at the end of July. And then I'm down in Williamsburg, Virginia in the first week of August, meeting up for Virginia ASCD for a summer conference on teaching and learning. So it's a full schedule. My website is EDrenalineRush.com. That's EDrenaline with an E. You can get access to the book there. You can get all my templates there. My speaking, like I said, I try to give as much away for free as I can. If you can't afford whatever it is, or like you have a problem with this stuff, like message me. Let me see what I can do to hook it up and help you out. I have a podcast I push out every Monday. I'm all in to do anything I can to help out because, like I said, we don't do this to make money. We do it to make an impact. And I think that getting kids excited, getting teachers excited, really can be infectious through the schools communities and really make some major changes happen. So anything I can do to help them all in.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us, John.
Hey, I really appreciate it, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to On Education. My name is Mike Washburn. My co-host is Glen Irvin. Want to get in touch with us? Check out our website at oneducationpodcast.com. You can tweet us at oneducationpod. Glenn is at Irv Spanish on Twitter. I can be found on Twitter at Mr. Washburn. You can find us on Facebook by visiting facebook.com/oneducationpod. We're also on Instagram at oneducationpod. If you're enjoying the show and think others would too, we'd be thrilled if you shared it with them. Please leave us a rating or review in Apple Podcasts or on the Google Play Store. When you leave a rating, it gives our rankings a boost. This helps others discover the show. We want to thank our presenting sponsor, Classcraft, for supporting us. Check out classcraft.com/oneducation to learn more about them. Thanks as always for listening. Stay awesome. See you soon.